So you launch, the big launch. It happens, all right? You're excited. You start getting people to come to your app, the people that you think would be your users. You start, demoing them, selling them, and trying to get them to at least use the platform, only to find out that they're not that interested. And you have no idea what to charge for it, right? I assume that you went into this thinking about making money, but you really don't know what to charge because you have no idea, like, what did you miss about this problem? Very common, right? It's happened to me. It happens to just about everybody that I talk to. If they're building an app for the first time, this is not this is not a problem that I'm above. I do it even now that I know what the right way to do things are. I still do it because the temptation to build things is just so real if you have that power. But you just can't stop yourself. It's bizarre. I think it comes from the fact that you think that you need to show somebody something in order to get them interested, which counterintuitively is not really the case. You don't always have to show something. My logo is backwards. Yeah, what are you gonna do? I think in the video it comes up the right way, but in the stream it comes up backwards. I don't know why that is. Mirror effect or whatever. All right, so what we're going to talk about tonight is how to avoid that. Everybody does this. I do this. A lot of people that I know do this. What we're going to do is try to avoid this by first, before pre-build, doing your user discovery. Who are you targeting? And do they have the pain point that you think they do? Is this problem that you have in your head real, right? Is it something that you can build a technology solution to, right? Now, while you may be quick to say, oh yeah, I have that problem, so it must be real. Maybe, but that doesn't mean everybody thinks about the problem in the same way that you do, right? So let's dig into how to approach this, right? We're going to do a very tactical approach to avoiding this misstep that even people with product management experience, development experience, I don't care who you are, I see this happening everywhere. So let me share my screen. Don't want this. Okay. Hopefully my screen is coming through. All right. So we're going to start with an idea that I had. Right. I want to build an app for bubble freelancers to minimize scope creep. So scope creep, for those of you that don't know, is when you're building an app for a client or your job, right? Or, your employer, somebody that you work for, and they keep asking for additional features. Oh, can you just do this? Oh, can you just do this? Oh, can you just make this icon go here? Oh, you said this, but we really meant this. This adds a lot of time. It completely messes up your development timeline, first off. And second, if you're a freelancer or an agency, it may not be within budget. And I find that a lot of freelancers, particularly newer freelancers, are a little hesitant to push back on their clients and say, hey, we didn't discuss this. And they tend to just say, oh yeah, okay, I'll do it. And then they wind up digging themselves a hole because they're agreeing to things that they may not be paid for. All right. So this is a problem. I've validated that people see this as a problem in my on Twitter with my friends on Twitter. They all seem to have this problem in one way or another. So the solution that I had, or the idea that I had, is I want to build an app for bubble freelancers to minimize scope creep. And I actually did this, and I've made a few missteps in even doing this that I'm going to kind of point out along the way, because I certainly messed this up too. But I did learn a lot. I did learn the proper and improper way to conduct these kind of like user interviews, user discovery stuff. All right, so we'll start with the idea. I want to build an app for Bubble freelancers. So the first thing that we want to do is define what problem are we even solving, right? What's the problem that we're solving, and what are some of the assumptions that go into this? Now, if you're doing this, if you're watching this, right, and you have your own app idea, fill this in with your stuff, right? Like, do this with me, but make it so that it's particular to your own use case, to the app idea that you have, right? This can be done for any app idea that you have, right? So don't use this, what I have, use your own idea. All right, so what are some of the problems here? I think the problem that I assume people have is that freelancers, call them Bubble freelancers, but really any freelancers. I chose Bubble freelancers because I had the problem myself, and also it's very targeted, right? These are like a very specific group of people that I'm targeting with this app. So I felt that was very narrow. So Bubble freelancers, I have a hard time. I want to say Bubble freelancers do work that they're not paid for. Something to that effect. We'll revise this, right? Because the wording is a little, the wording can get tricky with this stuff. All right. Do work that they're not paid for. Clients often ask for features that were not discussed in the original scope. If you've ever worked in freelancing for an agency, you'll hear this quite a bit, or even in just regular, like in a like business environment. Existing tools. This is one too. This is kind of where you're kind of doing your own, what's the competition here? Is there an app that's already out there that people don't really know about, or they're just not using for one reason or another? Existing tools. Now, the tools that are in this space are ClickUp, Miro, Monday, Trello, what's the other one? Notion. There's one more, the big one that I'm forgetting. These existing tools are subpar in preventing scope creep. So it's to say that they don't have the tool to really to minimize or I would say optimize the conversations that they're having with clients so that what they're going to work on is agreed to beforehand, right? Again, these are all of these are the things that I'm assuming that other people have, right? These are just assumptions at this point. We have to test this, right? We don't know if this is real. I have this problem, but again, I think that an important thing to point out is like, just because you are the subject matter expert or you have specific domain experience in an area, that doesn't mean that you understand the problem or look at the problem in the same way that other people do. You might not be in your target audience. You have to realize that even if you feel very close to the Bubble freelancing space or whatever it is that you're working on. So think generally, more general, right? Don't assume that because you have the problem, everyone else sees it the same way. This is one thing that I learned. I learned it very well, is that the way that people scope projects, particularly for Bubble, is widely varied. So any solution that I come up with that fits my narrow way of scoping projects may not work for the next person. So that's something that I learned in going through this process, is like, I don't know, like it's so hard to get even 2 answers. I interviewed about 30 people. I couldn't get 2 answers that were the same, right? So that's when I was like, I don't even know I don't know how to approach this. Okay. What else can I say? What other assumptions do we have here? Throw some ideas in the chat too. I'm open to suggestions if you have any, kind of like how you would think about approaching this problem or assumptions that you would make. All right, so we've got bubble freelancers don't do work that they're not paid for. Clients offer next feature, and we've got the existing tools click up on Monday. All right, let's start with this. Right, let's start with these assumptions. All right, we'll probably add a few more as we go through this. Now, the goal is to find out. Right now, in the original opening where I said, oh, that kind of described that story, 99% of the time people will be demoing their app, right? So they build the app and then they think, okay, it's time to sell. It's time to start selling and getting the app in front of people. So I'm going to get on these demo calls. Right? You think you probably have a few contacts, you have a network, you probably can reach out to a few people and say, hey, can you get on a call with me? I've got this software app that I'm building. I want to see what you think of it. Right? Now, what you do when you go into demo or pro bono work experience isn't every big problem. When you say pro bono work, do you mean like free work you've done for free? You go into that meeting thinking that you're going to be demoing or selling, right? And that's the first mistake here. Really what you want to do in going into these calls is find out, does the person have the problem that I think they do, right? Do they know they have the problem? Believe it or not, a lot of people, when you talk to them, they can kind of they'll talk about symptoms of a problem, but they don't know what the underlying thing is. And that's definitely what I learned too, is like scope creep is a symptom of a larger problem of uniformity around scoping, right? There's not there's everyone does it differently is the for my situation. But can the person articulate a symptom of the problem, or do they understand what the underlying problem is? The next key indicator is probably the most important one to knowing whether you should start building. Remember, this is all pre-built. You're doing all of this research and these user interviews before you start building anything. You don't want to build at this point because you don't know whether the problem that you have is real or just a fabrication in your head, right? Have they tried to hack together a solution? That's a big one. If they've done that, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, that's usually what it is, an Excel spreadsheet, or they're pulling from 4 or 5 different softwares to come up with a solution that to solve their own problem, that's a great sign. If they're doing that, if they realize enough, understand enough about their own problem that they've tried to solve it with something that they've built themselves, that is a great sign. That means that you should probably continue down this path here. And then the last thing you want to figure out is how much would they pay for a solution? I think this is important to know right off the bat. I think a lot of times in the beginning, you want to just give the app away for free because you just want to get people to start using it, which I don't think is good, because I don't think that it adds value to it. It demonstrates whether it adds value that people are willing to pay money for. And that's really the ultimate test of, like, are you really solving a problem that people care about? If they're willing to pay you for it, then the answer is yes, right? That's what you want. You want people to be willing to pay you to solve their problems. That is the ultimate test here. It's not like, do you have a nice idea? Thank you. I have a nice idea. Would you pay for it? No. Well, then that's not a nice idea. Other problems, having lots of ideas and not knowing where to start. Yes, that is a big one too. I think that comes from the ability to build, right? If you have the ability to build things, your temptation every time is just going to be to start building apps and showing. But I see this happen all the time. You start one project, you maybe put it out there on Twitter, get a mixed response or a lukewarm response, and then you're on to the next project, right? What did you learn from that? If you're just like building for the sake of building and practicing your skills and all that, and you enjoy it, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, by all means, right? But if you're thinking about your app idea as a business and something that you can make money from, and I think that's where a lot of us are. We don't want to do our day job. We want to quit our day job at some point and live on a passive income through some technology that we built. You have to make sure that you're focusing on the right stuff. Starting an idea, developing an idea and not finishing it. We all do this. I'm guilty of it. In the example that I'm even giving right now, the bubble freelancer thing, I've already kind of given up on this idea because when I learned more about how deep this problem goes, I was like, whoa, I don't know how motivated I am to really deeply understand this. I thought I was, but I don't know that I am. Had I spent 6 months to a year just developing, it would have taken me a much longer time to come to that realization. So I'm glad that I did these user interviews and decided this is such a nuanced problem. And is the end goal just going to look like ClickUp or Monday? It's possible, right? If it just turns into that, well, why did I do all that? Monday's already out there. Why? Why did I go through that? When you say not knowing what they really need or want, do you mean the founder or the users that they're speaking to? Okay. So these are the goals, right? These are the 4 kind of goals that all of the questions that we're going to come up with. Again, from my use case, you should be doing this for yourself, but all the questions that I'm going to come up with, they should support these 4 goals in one way or another. And do this in your own, what do you call it? I'm using Google Docs just because, it's easy. But if you're, use your favorite doc, Coda or Trello or Notion, whatever it is that you do here. The founder not knowing what they really, I think the founder not knowing, I think more often what happens is that a founder goes into a problem or an app idea thinking that it's going to be easy because they it's just, it seems like low hanging fruit. It's such an obvious problem that people have. Why don't I just solve this quick, build a quick app, put it out there and see the reaction I get? And then when you do that, you realize, oh, this problem goes way deeper than I originally thought. It's going to take this much effort. I don't know that that's the way that I want to spend the next 5 years of my life. Happens quite a bit. How do you find good problems? That's exactly what we're talking about right now, right? Before you build anything, you should be validating whether or not the problem that you assume is a good one, right? Is it a good problem to solve? Do you have the contacts and the domain experience to address this problem, right? Like you do want to have some connection to it. If I am an app developer and I want to solve a problem for plumbers, that's going to be incredibly difficult for me. I have no concept of how plumbers spend their time. I would have to learn about how plumbers spend their day before I even understand what problems they have, and then start doing this. So you're even further behind in your user discovery if you are trying to solve a problem in an industry or domain that you are not a part of, right? I have a friend of mine is going through that now. So I think the problem, and the interesting thing is that the problems are all around you. I think the best way to think of like what problems you should be solving is look at your own situations. What fields are you familiar with? Everyone's got experience somewhere, right? Even if it's if you've worked in restaurants your whole life, there's tons of problems there to solve. But have a part, I think the best way to start is to like have the problem yourself. That to me is where the best ideas have come from for me. Oh my God, all the time. All right, so always wanting the perfect idea or the perfect app before putting it out there. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about here. You don't want to do that. You don't want to try to be perfect. You don't want to build every feature in the world before you get it out there. You might be solving the wrong problem. All right, now the cadence. Now, so what we're going to do again, we're going to come up with questions to address the things that we've assumed up here, right? But let's just talk a little bit about the cadence of how these calls should go. I said this before. These are not sales calls. These are not demos. You're in discovery right now. All you're doing is learning about someone else's problem. Think of yourself as an investigator or a psychologist or detective. These are analogies for the skill sets that you're going to need to do this correctly. If you ask leading questions, you're going to get the answers that you want, right? And you don't want that. You want to make sure you should be trying to disprove your idea. That's how you should think about this. You should be disproving. This isn't a problem that everybody needs. And then let them tell you otherwise, because you want to be coming from that critical thinking of maybe this is not worth the time. Because if you do decide this is worth your time and you do it and you were wrong, you just wasted a lot. You just wasted 6 months building of something that's never going to see the light of day or that nobody cares about. Okay, so the cadence of these calls should be conversational, right? And I don't think that necessarily you need to ask every single question in your script like a robot, right? Like you don't need to go every one by one. I think just kind of use it as a guide to steer the conversation to getting to, the four goals that we've outlined here. But you want it to be more conversational because if people feel like they're being like quizzed or tested, they're gonna get nervous. It's like, why is this person asking me these questions, right? One way to approach it is I have this problem. Again, if you're coming in from a space like you have this problem, then you're related to it and you have a deep connection to it. So you can say like, I have this problem and I'm wondering if you do also, right? Starting with that tends to disarm people. They don't feel like they're being sold to. They don't feel like they're being bored by a demo. You're just kind of like you're on the same level, right? Still, is a call for perfection really a problem? Because providing a quality product to your users helps in the success of the platform. Yes, I agree. But perfection at this phase is not what you should be focused on. You should not be focused on perfection when you're just learning about someone and their problems. Quality products can come later after you've already got users, after you've already got, you validated that the idea is real. That's when you start striving for perfection iteratively over time, right? You want to put out the best product out there. But in this initial phase, perfection, all it's going to do is slow you down if you're trying to put out something beautiful. And there's varying perspectives on this. I've heard people say that that's how they get attention, is that they put a shiny user interface in front of people and see how they react to it, right? Some people go that approach. I don't subscribe to that, but I think it really does depend on the idea, right? If it's a design tool that you're building and you're trying to get in front of designers, that's going to be important, right? So it depends what you're working on. Yes, you need to find out exactly what the users need. All right, so I have this problem. We talked about that. Is that like why? Because at some point the person that you're talking to is going to ask like, why are we having this call? Why did you reach out to me? Are you just like, do you just care about me enough to ask me these weird questions? You could say like, we're building an internal solution for a problem that I have, and we're considering it opening up to a broader audience, right? Like that again, that's kind of disarming as opposed to like why. Because if you're in the same space also or the same industry as people that you're talking to, they may think you're being like, like trying to get insider information to their business, like trying to compete with them or whatever. So they may be less willing to talk to you. But if you kind of approach it with this, like I said, I did my user interviews for this mobile freelancing thing, and I was like amazed at how open and willing to speak with me that people were in describing the problems that they have. because when you're getting at their problems, you're not like asking them about any secret sauce, like what's working for them. You're really asking about what doesn't work for them and things that they would want to fix. So that's like much less threatening, I think, to somebody that may be thinking of you as competition. All right, this isn't a sales call, right? We're not selling. We don't have anything to sell yet. We are just getting to the root of a problem. And finally, resisting the temptation to demo. This one is real. This is hard to do. I had something to demo, and I with all my might, I tried. I had to resist this urge to like demo what I had already. And every time I demoed it, I regretted it because it wasn't the problem. It wasn't. I didn't hit the problem that people really cared about. So sticking to that, I think, is important. Now, the mom test, right? The concept. If anyone's heard of this book, or if anyone is building your own app idea, I think that it's super important to read this book. It's not very long. It's a very short book, maybe like less than 100 pages, but it's so potent in the way that it presents how you should be thinking about engaging with your initial users. Remember, you're looking for 10 users at this point. If you've got nothing, you're thinking about your first 10 users. You're not thinking about scaling to 100 or 10,000 or a million, right? You're not thinking about scale at this point. You're thinking about your first 10 users. How do you serve them best? So the concept of the mom test is that you're doing this, you're asking these questions in such a way that not even your mother would be able to lie to you about whether or not this is a good idea or not, right? Because what the majority of people will do when you've taken the time to build something and then present it to them and demo it to them, they're going to be like, oh, that's real nice. Thanks. So cool. Wow, where can I sign up? And as soon as that call is over, you never hear from them again. Well, what happened? They felt bad to tell you that they don't care about what you're showing them. That's what happened. It happens all the time. They don't want to be rude to you because they see that you've put so much effort into this and you're very passionate about what you're building. Naturally, you've invested time and money in this, so you're going to be passionate and you're going to want to lead them into that. So resist that temptation. All right. So what questions can we come up with? And again, you're in the chat. Drop some ideas for me here so that I have some help here because these are kind of hard to come up with. All right, so what would be the first if I was thinking about freelancers? And I think the first question that I would probably ask is, how do you build your clients? How do you build your clients? Do you bill hourly? Do you bill on a fixed rate basis? I imagine that the problem of scope creep is not as much of a problem for somebody who is billing hourly, and more a problem of someone who is trying to work on a fixed budget, right? So right off the bat, even though the bubble freelancer is a very targeted persona, there's still a subset of a subset of people that do things differently. Hourly people might like scope creep because that means they're going to make more money. The project may never get done, but they're getting paid. So how do you bill your clients would be kind of my first thought here. How do you bill? Second, how do you scope work? How do you scope your work? What's the process that you use for coming up with a budget and a timeline for a project, right? A lot of times, and I get this all the time, and I try to avoid the question like the plague. But when a founder has an app idea and they're coming to you to build it as the developer, they're 9 times out of 10 they're going to ask, how much is this going to cost and how long is this going to take? How much and how long? And the developer usually has to go through their process of how they scope how they scope their work in order to come up with an answer. How detailed is your scoping process? Yeah, I mean, that is true. Like if you're scoping a project, even if you, and this, you know what, it may be wrong to even assume that hourly people don't have this problem, because hourly people still are going to be asked for an estimate. And even though they're billing hourly, they're also going to be, like they're still kind of, they want to honor the commitment that they had made to the client originally, right? So they're still going to be held to some budget and timeline, even if they are getting, paid by the hour. Yeah, exactly. They're going to want some deadlines. The more detailed your scoping process is, I think the more accurate your timeline and deadlines are going to be. But for anyone that develops anything, you know that it is wildly difficult to produce an accurate timeline or deadline for an app. It depending on how big or small the features are. If you're going little by little, right? If you're building little by little, like very small features and micro, release that, see how people react to it, come back, release this, see how people react to it. I'm talking like a day, like 3 hours of development work, release that. I think that's the way to do things. But if you're trying to estimate a project from start to finish, like I'm going to build this Bubble Freelancer scope creep tool, and I'm trying to get a sense of how long it's going to take, it's going to be very difficult to do. In terms of the contract, if there are any. Would the question there be like what do you put into the terms of your agreements? Or what is the liability of, what is your exposure in your agreements? Is that kind of what you're getting at? I would also say, how long does it take you to scope a project? Right? Like how long does that process take you? Because if I can come up with something that it makes it faster, also I want to get a sense if do they even see scoping as a problem in itself? Like it's very difficult and to do, and especially if you're starting out, you need to have a set of it's gonna be if you're just starting out, it's gonna be very difficult for you to estimate how long a project is, because you're building for the first time, you're building something for someone. Yeah, I think it does. I think the terms of the contract and the liability definitely go into how detailed your scoping process is. But in the beginning, you don't know even what to ask. You don't know how detailed to get. So again, narrowing on who sees this problem, at what phase are they in their career in doing this, and do they see the problem differently? Maybe targeting, I may be saying, okay, I'm only going to target Bubble developers who have less than 1 year of development or contracting experience, because they're the ones that this problem is most immediate for. Whereas somebody who has 10 years, they've kind of figured out their own, method. It may be difficult, but they spent 5 years or 10 years developing a process that works for them. They're not going to see this as an immediate of a problem as the people that are just starting out, where it's like, oh man, my last project, I only charged them for 20 hours and I worked 100. All right, that's a problem. And that's a pain. You want to solve that you want to provide a painkiller for that problem. All right, so how long does it take you to scope a project? What else can we say here? I think a big one is, have you ever done done work that you weren't paid for? Or how accurate or detailed, like Nudai points out, how detailed, accurate details are your proposals? Now, how have you ever done work that you weren't paid for? That could be a little bit misleading, that question, because it's like, did you do the work and like they just wouldn't pay you? I would word this probably a little bit differently. More like, have you ever done work that you didn't bill for or couldn't bill for? If so, why? You know, like why did that happen? And follow up would be why? Why did that happen? And again, I want to point out that this is not like, you're not going, how do you bill your clients? Hourly, check. How do you scope work? You use ClickUp, check. You're not just going down this as a, as a checklist. You're trying to get them to open up about the things that they see as a problem, right? Again, going back to the goals that you've set for them. Yeah, that's a good one. What's your work experience like? What is, or I would say maybe how long have you been freelancing? Have you been freelancing? And how many projects have you completed? Something like that, right? Because then you can get a sense of like, all right, this person's in their first year of freelancing, this person is in their 10th year of freelancing. When I was doing this, it ran the gamut, right? Like there was people that were developers, and for 10 years they worked in corporate environments, and then they moved over to freelance themselves. Like, and then there was people that were just starting out, and they're like, do you have a contract that I can use in my for my clients? I'm like, sure, yeah, why not? Right, so it was all over the place, right? People that were just trying to just getting started. And I think, and kind of a side note of that is like, in what I ultimately got people to sign up with was something that was more like a prospecting tool, because I realized very soon, or not soon, it took me like a month or two to realize this, but like, you can't have the problem of scope creep if you don't have clients. And some of the people that I was talking to didn't have clients. So what's a more immediate need to solve, right? Someone who's 10 years in and they may have scope creep here and there, or someone who's just trying to get clients, right? So I pivoted and started focusing on, just helping people with their initial outreach and getting their first few projects, right? But again, that didn't occur to me. It's so obvious in retrospect, but it didn't occur to me while I was doing it that, oh yeah, like you need clients to have scope creep. And again, I am somebody with this problem, but I failed to realize, how did I start? I was just worried about, holy crap, is anybody going to pay me to do this? Does anybody even trust me as a developer? That's where my head was for probably 4 or 5 months before anyone was like, took a chance on me to say like, yeah, well, I have this app idea, I can build it. Can you build it for me? So, it just wasn't obvious to me until I started talking with people about this. Another question here: have you delivered per scope and not getting paid? Delivered per scope and not getting paid, meaning like, did the client refuse to pay you? Maybe because they didn't see what you delivered as complete. That's another good one, because a lot of times what the client says and the developer understands is not always aligned. So let's call it have you delivered work that the client didn't agree was complete? Now, and this speaks to like, what were your initial conversations like? Did you include in your scoping process what was included and what was not included? That's something that I'm seeing people do quite frequently. For example, you can say, a client can say, send out an email. I want this to send I want to build a functionality for reset password, right? and I want that to be in an email format. Very common functionality. And that's fine. You can do that. But then when they see the email that goes out, oh, that's like plain text. I wanted a little bit more of a logo. I want this to be formatted in this way. And then they say, well, they could say, well, you said that you were going to do this part. And from the client's perspective, that's right. You said you were going to build an email for me. That's correct. But from the developer's perspective, yeah, but we didn't talk about formatting. That never even came up in conversation. So now the developer's kind of guilty, like feeling guilty, like, oh, I didn't specify what was not included, and they feel like they kind of have to do it now because they didn't say, oh, well, formatting isn't included. But now again, this goes into like you're going to start doing work that you were not paid for, or the client has no intention of paying you for. Have you delivered bullet point 7? What does that mean, bullet point 7? Have you delivered per scope and not gotten paid? Bullet point 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Have you delivered the work that the client didn't agree was complete? So is that what you meant by that? Have you delivered per scope and not gotten paid? All right, what else can we say here? Have you ever done work that you didn't bill for? Oh, you mean change this is what you're saying. Change this to have you delivered per scope and not gotten paid. Have you oh, I see. Okay. It's kind of the same question as this, but now I kind of see where you're going with this. How you delivered per scope and not gotten paid. I would even kind of expand on this. Have you ever how do I say, like, disagreed? Have you ever, well, I guess that's the same as this. Have you ever delivered work that the client, yeah, that's kind of the same. It's not even why did that happen. It's also why do you feel that happened? Like, why do you think that happened? Again, you're trying to get into their head. Why do you think that? Why do you think that happened? Trying to get into the way that they think. Full-time, remote, working conditions, full-time and remote. Well, I would ask on that, like, how does that, which question does that answer here? Full-time or remote? Do they have the problem? I guess if you're trying to figure out like the demographic of the people that you're, that you're trying to serve, that's probably good to know. Yeah, I think that's valid. How do you build your clients? I think, are you a full-time? No, you're right. This is important. Are you a full-time freelancer? Because if you're not, and you're just kind of doing this on the side, you're not going to see this as as big a problem as somebody who is solely reliant on their freelancing income. So that is an important question. How do you build your clients? How do you scope work? How long does it take for you to scope a project? All right. What else can I think of here? If I'm thinking of, probably have you tried to hack together a solution? What tools have you used to scope projects, and why weren't they sufficient in preventing scope creep? So kind of speaking to this one, to this goal here, have you tried to hack together a solution? Are you okay with SOW? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Do you ask your clients if they're okay with the SOW? Is that what you mean? I have to think if they're signing this statement of work, then well, yeah, I mean, yes, I agree that, there should always be a statement of work in place, but it kind of goes back to how detailed is your statement of work, right? Like, are you including all of these things? Are you including what to include, what not to include? I just coming up with what to put into the statement of work is the challenge here. And I think that's where this problem really lives. It's not just about presenting the SOW, but how much time did it take you to produce a comprehensive statement of work, and did you know the right questions to ask to be able to create that? Right. I think that's where this problem lives. How much would they pay for solutions? So this is the part where I don't know. I don't know how to ask this question, because it's kind of like, if they've gone through your questions and you can confidently say that this person has scope creep and they do see it as a problem and they have tried to hack together a solution using other tools or something that they've built, do you just go in and say, if there was a solution, maybe the question is more like, how many hours how many hours? I think it's more of a follow-up to this question. Have you ever delivered per scope and not gotten paid? Why do you think that happened? How many hours would you say that you work that are unpaid? Right? Because then you're starting to assign a dollar value to this problem, right? You're saying almost like, okay, you worked 20 hours at, let's just call an easy number. No, wait. Let's say you work 10 hours, right? And you charge $10 an hour. I'm just going to say these numbers because I can't do math in my head. 10 times 10 is 100. So you got paid for 100, but you really worked 20, right? So now you've got $100 of work that you did that you were not paid for, right? So I think in terms of trying to decide what people are willing to pay for this, you may even just offset it with, well, do you track your hours? How much time have you spent where you weren't able to build a client for because of, your inability to develop a scope, an accurate scope? Then you can say, all right, I lost, I'm losing $500 a month to scope creep. Would you not pay $49.99 for a tool that's solved that for you? Right? You're paying the $49.99 for a solution to this, and you're gonna, like that $400 difference. So maybe that's how you show how you can add value to in this scenario. Again, every scenario is different. You should be thinking about this in your own situations for the app that you're building. But in this situation, that would probably be my approach to figuring out how much value it's adding for people and therefore how much they're willing to pay. Say they can scrap Monday. Monday is expensive. Say they can not use Monday anymore. They don't have to use Miro and all of the everything that they would need to scope and price a project actually, and put that statement of work that's so comprehensive and robust that they don't have to worry about scope anymore. and they charge them $49.99. I think that would be, you know, like a fair trade. I think that'd be something that would be willing to attract people away from the tools that they're using. So, what tools? Yeah, I think that's how I would do it. Anything else that I can say about this? I don't think so. I think that this is probably, I think that keeping it simple, right? I think too many questions and you're going to make yourself a little bit nervous, like, oh, I have to hit all these questions. But if I know this is my script, I can have this kind of in the back of my mind. All right, these are my questions. You kind of get comfortable asking these questions over and over again, and it becomes more conversational than an interview, right? Like, interviews make people tense. A conversation amongst peers is a lot more relaxed, and they're probably going to be willing to give you more information than what you would expect. So I think this is it. I think this is how I would approach this. I think in another week, we're going to talk about, you know, how to actually find these people, right? So this was easy for me. I talked a little bit about this before. This was easy for me to get, you know, on people's calendars because of the Twitter presence that I have, and we're all of the bubble developers that I know are pretty much on Twitter, right? So it was very easy for me to just kind of DM people and say, hey, I think you have the problem scope creep. Can you chat with me about this? What was kind of the next level was sending out a tweet that got other people interested in what I was doing, by just saying something, you know, saying a very one sentence, and then I got a bunch of inbound requests to sign up, and then I was just sending out credentials. I wasn't even having these meetings with them anymore. I would just get a request. Hey, we like the prospecting tool. Can you send us? Can you just send me some credentials? Sure. Here you go. And that's how I got like the 60 signups or whatever. But again, that took quite a bit of learning and talking to different people that looked at this problem very differently before I knew the right words to say, right? And that's when you start getting into marketing, right? Like, that's when it starts becoming more like you know, like you just put something out there, whether it's a short video, a short tutorial, or a, you know, just even like just targeted ads or whatever. Because you know the right things to say, you know your messaging, and you know what this problem is. Again, we're all pre-built right now. We're still pre-built. We haven't built anything. So this is what I recommend that everybody does before they start building. Now, I know that people will push. I know that it's not a it's not, I wouldn't say boring, but it's less exciting to have to do all of these user conversations than just building and actually seeing your idea come to life. But this is like the prerequisite to the build, right? If you don't want to waste your time building something that you're not sure people care about, then this is the thing to do. All right, I think I'm going to wrap up for tonight. If there's any other questions, throw them in the chat. But this was a good session. Tell me if you have your own app idea. Have you fallen into this trap before of just feature build, release without any user input? And, you know, like, what was that like? Am I hitting it with when I say that? Like, I think that I mean, I've definitely gone through that process quite a few times. So the pain point for me and the temptation to build things is just very real. So before you waste your time and money developing an app, make sure you're doing your user validation and interviews first. All right, people, I will see you next week. Every Thursday at 7 p.m., we're doing something related to acquiring users. I think it's a good conversation that we want to have more of. I want to see how other people have found their first 1,000 users. and see end users' time. Yeah, that's a good point too. Like you're kind of wasting the users. Like if you're just demoing, you don't know who the user is. You might be wasting their time with with this demo, and they're going to be less likely to get on another call with you if you've wasted their time. But yes, every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, you can go to twitch.tv/bubblehack, or you can go to the YouTube Live, streaming on both platforms. We want to get more conversation going around strategies to find users. All right, I will catch you next week. Also, if you have found users, if you do have a user base, talk to me and let's have a chat. I would love to bring you onto the stream and kind of get at what your path was, because everybody's different. Everyone's got a different way to approach their audience and, different field, and, have to be very creative. So I always find that very interesting. So if you're interested watching this on YouTube, reach out to me and we'll set up a stream to chat about that. All right, everybody, have a great evening. Catch you next week.